Hey guys, welcome to another lesson in Science 24. This is Unit 4, and this video will be for Topic 3. And today we're going to talk about seat belts and child restraints and some of the safety and mechanisms that go into seat belts. Now, a little bit of seatbelt history. Seatbelts have been developed to be safe and comfortable. That's kind of what we want right now. Now, the original designs were two-point belts, or lap belts, that should say, that were held across a person's pelvis that did not stop the upper body from moving. So these were the first generation seat belts. So they're just like usually in the back of most vehicles, the middle belt is just a lap belt. That's pretty much what all seat belts originally were. Now, the modern three-point belts or shoulder harnesses were designed to help restrain the upper body, but one's head can still move. And that's a second generation seatbelt. And that's what we have in a lot of vehicles now, even in the middle. And it's also, it's protecting your upper body from going forward too, instead of just over your lap. Now, technology though has not developed a restraint for the head, but properly raised headrests can prevent injury from happening. So if you adjust your headrest to the right height needed for you, it can help prevent some injuries. Now, how a seatbelt works. So without a seatbelt, your body would continue to travel at the same velocity that the vehicle you were driving was going if you were in an accident. So if you're going 100 miles an hour in an accident and you didn't have a seatbelt on and that vehicle was instantly stopped in an accident, you would travel through the cab of your vehicle at 100 miles an hour until you hit something and stopped. So that's why, most of the time when people don't wear seatbelts and they get into an accident, it's not really very good for them. Now, a little bit behind the technology with the webbing, so what the seatbelt's made of. So the seatbelt material is made up of a polyester and nylon, which can stretch past its normal length during an accident. This allows the vehicle occupants to stop more gradually and feel a smaller force because it's about lengthening and slowing down the force that's applied to the body. Now, the retractor unit, which is inside of the belt mechanism. So inside the retractor portion of the seat belt is a cleaver system that involves a pendulum and a ratchet. If the vehicle experiences a sudden stop, the pendulum in the ratchet mechanism swings forward and locks a bar in place that prevents more webbing from coming out. Now, just kind of a little picture of that. We can see on the left-hand side here, under normal driving conditions, the pendulum and lock bar are in rest position. The sprocket that holds the seatbelt is free to rotate. Now, as the occupant leans against the webbing, the seatbelt unreels. However, if we look over on the right-hand side here, we can see that during an accident, the pendulum tilts and forces the lock bar into the sprocket. The sprocket locks and the seatbelt restrains the occupant. So we can see we have a force acting this way in direction of the arrow there. We can see how the pendulum moves, and therefore the lock bar goes up into the sprocket, locking the webbing in place. Now, child restraints. So the Canadian Automobile Association, or the CAA, reports that 1/3 of Canadian children are not properly restrained while in a vehicle. Now, children have weaker bones and muscles along their comparatively heavy heads. And this is in relation and compared to their body size. So kids have really big heads compared to their bodies. Now, when it comes to child restraints, the back seat is the safest and pretty much the only legal place nowadays for children to be. Seat belts are designed best to fit adults, not children, and the proper use of a child safety seat has been shown to reduce the likelihood of a child being injured or killed in a crash by as much as 75%. Now, according to law in Alberta, it is the driver's responsibility to ensure that passengers under 16 years of age are buckled up correctly. This is important for you guys who are relatively new drivers still. You have anybody under this age of 16 and they're not properly restrained, you can get a ticket for it. Now, for children under 40 pounds or 18 kg or under 6 years of age, the law states the following. An appropriate child safety seat must be used. The safety seat must be correctly installed in the vehicle, and the child must be secured into the seat. Now, when we talk about all the way from like small babies to larger children, we'll start with rear-facing child restraints. Now, rear-facing semi-reclined position, this supports the large head and weak neck and back. Now, in a crash, the forces are distributed along the length of the body to protect the child's weak muscles and softer bones. Now, rear-facing child safety seat appropriate for the baby's weight and height must be used until they are at least 1 year old or weigh at least 22 pounds and are walking. Now, parents should not rush to put their children in forward-facing safety seats. The rear-facing position is the safest, and many child safety seats allow children to stay rear-facing to higher weight limits, such as 30 to 40 pounds. Now the forward-facing seat, this is when the toddler is ready for a forward-facing position because they are over 1 year old, they are over 22 pounds, and they are walking. Now in a crash, forces are distributed along the strongest parts of the body, so the shoulders, hips, and the torso. Now a child can move to a forward-facing safety seat when they are at least 22 pounds, 1 year of age, and are walking. Now forward-facing safety seats are appropriate for a toddler's weight and height must be used until they weigh at least 40 pounds or at least 6 years old. Now many forward-facing child safety seats can be used to higher weight limits. And it's like I said in the previous slide, it's better to wait till kids are pretty much too big for their seat instead of them being just at the right level to go up. You want to make sure the longer you can keep them in rear facing, the longer then you can keep them in a forward facing to a booster seat, the safer they're going to be in a vehicle. Now booster seats. So when used alone, the seat belts ride high on a child's belly and neck. This can lead to serious internal injuries if they're in a crash. However, using a booster seat allows the seat belt to fit safely and correctly and provides a more comfortable ride. Now booster seats are appropriate for a child's weight and height are recommended, and if they have outgrown their forward facing safety seat or if they're under 9 years old, and if they weigh between 40 and 80 pounds or less than 4 foot 9 inches tall. So a few different parameters there from when they should be in a forward facing seat to a booster seat. Now, if you just look on the side here, why the booster seat is so important. For one, the head is protected by the booster seat or the vehicle seat's headrest. Two, the shoulder strap fits between the neck and the shoulder, otherwise it would be up around the child's face and that could be very dangerous. And three, the lap belt fits lower over the hips instead of higher around the stomach, which could really cut them off and cause some internal injuries in case of an accident. Now, to wear a seat belt versus not wearing a seat belt. So how big is the problem of crash-related injuries and death? Now, motor vehicle crashes are a major public health concern. More than 2.3 million adult drivers and passengers were treated in emergency departments as a result of being injured in a motor vehicle crashes in 2009. Now, the lifetime cost of crash-related deaths and injuries among drivers and passengers was $70 billion in 2005. And young adults 18 to 24 have the highest crash-related injuries of all adults. And that's usually because they're a little more not near experienced or a little more risk-taking. Now, what is the impact of the seatbelt use? Seatbelts reduce serious serious crash-related injuries and deaths by about 50%. Now, airbags, however, they provide added protection but are not a substitute for a seatbelt. Airbags plus a seatbelt provide the greatest protection for adults. And that's one thing, that's important. Airbags, are there as a secondary unit. The seatbelt is still the best way to go. Now, who is likely to wear a seatbelt? So adults age 18 to 34 are less likely to wear seatbelts than adults 35 or older. Men are 10% less likely to wear seatbelts than women. Adults who live in rural areas are 10% less likely to wear seatbelts than adults who live in urban and suburban areas. And seatbelt use is lower in states with secondary enforcement seatbelt laws or no seatbelt laws compared to states with primary enforcement laws. And these stats are from the Center of Disease Control and are for the states, but they're very, very similar to Canadian stats. And what this graph over here shows, and I think you've probably seen it previous, it just shows that in 1987 when seatbelt laws came into play in Alberta, and we can see there was quite high fatality rates. This purple line here is in relation to passengers using a seatbelt, and so quite low. And as we can see that the occupants of a vehicle go up in their seatbelt use, we see how it's inversely related to the occupant fatalities index going down. So we have less deaths because we have more people using their seatbelt. And that's it for on seatbelt use. Another safety feature of vehicles, a very important safety feature of vehicles. So hopefully you learned something about that today. And just to make sure you're aware, one of the use of seatbelts and what a necessary thing they are to have within a vehicle and use. And two, just about child restraints too. So thanks and have a great day.